Today's podcast is about the art of rapport. This is the opposite of war. It is the art of building a connection with the opposition, finding common ground, and ultimately convincing them that your course of action is actually in their best interest. Okay, so let me walk you through a scenario. You meet someone that we can agree is oppositional to you. They're not in agreement. They don't want what you want. We have competing interests. So what can we do when we meet them but before we really go into any kind of negotiation? Here are some tips on how to match and mirror this person when you meet them. This is the first step in building a connection. So first thing you want to do is when you talk to someone who's oppositional to you or adversarial, whatever you want to call it, first thing you want to do is be subtle. Let's not come in too hot. Don't come in too strong. It's a guaranteed path to an expensive lawsuit. So let's be subtle. The goal is to make the other person feel comfortable and understood. Not to make them feel like you are mocking them. So be subtle in your mirroring. Remember, the goal here is to match and mirror. If you have any questions about how to match and mirror, I encourage you to take a look at my neuro-linguistic programming interview I did in late April 2023. It's right there on my YouTube channel. It's on also my website, chrismeyerlawfirm.com. Just go to articles, videos, and podcasts and subscribe while you're at it. Okay, so we talked about the importance of being subtle. Something else you should do is pay attention to their body language. This is the most important part of matching and mirroring. Notice how they are sitting, standing, gesturing, and using their facial expressions. Then you want to adjust your own body language to match theirs. Also, match their tone of voice. Pay attention to the pitch, the volume, and the speed of their voice. Then adjust your own voice to match theirs. Match their vocabulary. Notice the words they use. Then try to use similar words yourself. Remember, if you have a great vocabulary and maybe they're not extremely literate, maybe you want to knock it down a few notches. Remember, we want to put ourselves at their level. So try to use similar words, similar vocabulary. It's not a time to use those big college words. There's not the time to do that. You might also want to match their energy level. If they're excited, then you be excited. If they're relaxed, you be relaxed. If they're sad, you be sad. It's important to remember that matching and mirroring is just one tool that can be used to build rapport. It is not the only thing you need to do, but it can be a helpful way to get started. Here are some additional tips. You want to be genuine. Do not try to be someone you're not. The other person will be able to tell if you're being fake, and it will only make them feel uncomfortable. So maybe you really want to practice this in a friendly, non-confrontational environment until you can match and mirror someone and be genuine at the same time. Because, there's some people, they're really good at detecting if you're being fake. So just be careful with that. Something else, and this is a very important rule. Always be respectful. As hard as it is, as adversarial and oppositional as they are, you're not going to lower yourself to their level if they're being disrespectful. You want to always be respectful. And also, and it's not about just being respectful because that's the right thing to do. It's also, if you practice being respectful all the time, then you create a baseline when you interact with people, because you know you will always be respectful. That is something you practice and you do every day with everybody that you communicate with. So as long as you know you're being respectful, then when you approach and talk to someone, you can quickly gauge where they're at. If your attitude and your behavior and your emotions are all over the place, then it's going to be impossible to kind of gauge where they are in relation to you. So create a baseline. The best way to do that is by being respectful. And remember, you're not trying to manipulate the other person. You're simply trying to build a connection with them. So be respectful. Something else? Be patient. It takes time to build rapport with someone. So don't be too pushy. Don't expect to be able to match and mirror them perfectly right away. Just keep practicing and you'll get better at it over time. Okay, so we drilled down into the matching and mirroring. So what happens after we successfully matched and mirrored someone that you met? So now how can you move forward to find common ground with that person? Common ground is the next step after you matched and mirrored. So we made them feel comfortable. They let down their guard. But before we negotiate, we want to let them know, hey, we are you. I'm you. I'm from the same town. I'm from the same area. We have the same interests. So let's work on some common ground first to let them know, hey, we're both good people here. So once we've successfully matched and mirrored, now you can start to look for common ground. So here's a few tips. First thing you can always do to help find common ground is ask questions. Ask the other person about themselves, their interests, and their hobbies. This will give you a better understanding of what they're passionate about, and it will help you find areas where you have something in common. Something else? Pay attention to their body language. Personally, I think nonverbal cues are just important, or if even more important than their verbal cues, because they could be telling you one thing, but their nonverbal cues are telling you something else. I'll give you a quick example. I get court-appointed work for CPS cases all the time. I represent kids, I represent parents, whatever. A perfect example is I'm representing a parent who has, we'll just say, an alcohol issue, and it's affecting their ability to provide a safe, stable environment for their kids, because the alcohol is just a big distraction in their life. So, and the CPS's position is that they need to go through some services and work on their alcohol problem, right? Nope, that's the right thing to do. Now, if I'm talking to them and I'm asking about, okay, well, are we progressing? Are we making progress? Are we sober? And they're telling me what I want to hear, but their body language says something else. They're looking down, their arms are crossed, not being very responsive to the question. But and the other thing is they're failing the lab reports are coming back, and we know they're failing their drug tests. So, but that's not really relevant to this podcast. The issue is that they're telling you one thing, but their body language is saying something else. Another example is maybe if I'm a court-appointed lawyer to represent a parent who's addicted to drugs, and I'm asking them, okay, are you clean? Are you still using? And they're trying to convince me that they've never used illegal drugs in their entire life. And I know that's not true. And their body language is saying something completely different. So that's why I'm harping so heavily on this issue about paying attention to their body language. Because when people are talking about things they're interested in, or what they're doing or not doing, their body language will usually give it away. If you see someone nodding their head, smiling, or leaning in, then maybe that's a good sign that they're engaged in a conversation and that they might be open to finding common ground with you. So just pay attention to the body language. Very important. And again, I want to refer back to my neuro-linguistic programming interview that I did in late April 2023. Very in-depth explanation about what that is. Okay? Something else you can do to help look for common ground is use open-ended questions. Open-ended questions are questions that cannot be answered with a simple yes or no. They're a great way to get people talking about themselves and their interests. For example, instead of saying, "Do you like to read?" you could ask, "What are your favorite books?" Another way to describe that when open-ended questions is non-leading. If I ask somebody a leading question, that's typically a question where the question itself suggests the answer, like, when did you stop beating your wife? There's really no way to answer that without admitting that you beat your wife. So that would be a leading question. That would be very inappropriate, especially if you're trying to build rapport with someone or find some kind of common ground. So you don't want to ask such a leading question that suggests the answer. And other types of leading questions are questions that can only be answered with a yes or no. So just try to stay away from that. So just open-ended questions, let them describe, explain, clarify. You're not boxing them in with leading questions, just open-ended. Another thing, be positive and enthusiastic. People are more likely to want to connect with you if you are positive and enthusiastic. So make sure to smile, make eye contact, use upbeat language, put your cell phone down. If you're like me and you wear glasses and you can't see anything without your glasses, a great way for me to give somebody my full attention, so I'm not accidentally looking at my phone or my watch or my laptop or reading my emails, I just take off my glasses and I'm all theirs. There's nothing I can do when I take off my glasses other than just pay attention to the person in front of me. Very good thing to do. So finding common ground with someone is a great way to build rapport and create a connection. By following these tips, you can make it easier to find common ground with the people that you meet. Okay, so we successfully matched and mirrored someone you met, and we successfully found common ground with that person. So now, how can I move forward and gently suggest that they agree with my course of action? How can I convince them that my course of action is actually in their best interest? And remember, I'm not trying to be pushy or manipulate anyone, and I'm trying to build a connection with someone who is oppositional, adversarial to me, possibly someone I cannot stand, but we have to find something that works, something in the middle. So this podcast, The Art of Rapport, is not always about finding ways to get your way. It's also about negotiation. So again, once you've successfully matched and mirrored and you found common ground, and now it's time to gently suggest that they agree with my course of action, or maybe we can find something in the middle, but not too much, because remember, we want to be, successful. So here's some tips. First thing you can do is start by asking for their opinion. This shows that you respect their thoughts and feelings, and it makes them more likely to be open to your suggestions. For example, you can say something like, "What do you think about this idea?" Or, "I was thinking about doing this. What do you think?" So make it look like it's their idea. Something else you could do is frame your suggestion in a positive light. People are more likely to be receptive to suggestions that are presented in a positive way. For example, instead of saying, "We should do this," you could say, "I think this would be a great idea." Another thing, be willing to compromise. It's not always possible to get someone to agree with you 100%. But if they have some concerns about your suggestion, be willing to listen to them and try to find a compromise that works for both of you. Last thing, be patient. It takes time to build trust and rapport with someone. Don't expect them to agree with you on everything right away. Just keep being respectful and patient, and eventually they'll be more likely to see things your way. So by following these tips, you can gently suggest that someone agree with your course of action without being too pushy or too overbearing. I pray that today's podcast, it was not too long. I hope it was a little short, a little catchy, informative. And most importantly, I hope it was relevant and that you would like to learn more. And I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert. See, I'm already doing it. I'm already trying to build a connection with the listener. But I do think these are important tips to, again, build a connection with the opposition, find some common ground, and then hopefully convince them to kind of see things your way or find something in the middle that works without being too pushy and certainly not manipulating them. Thank you for listening. Please consider subscribing.